What if I told you that the divine nature you revere in the heavens exists not only above you but within you? That the authority of creation does not rest in some distant monarch, but flows through every fiber of your being? Imagine the shift, the liberation, if we embrace this truth. For centuries, humanity has envisioned God as a distant authority, a being separate from ourselves and the world we inhabit. This perception paints God as a ruler seated on a celestial throne, omnipotent and omniscient, dispensing judgment and control over the vast expanse of creation. This image, while comforting to some, creates an unbridgeable divide between the divine and the human. It places the sacred outside of us, far beyond our reach, and transforms our relationship with God into one of subservience and fear rather than intimacy and understanding. This perspective originates from an innate human tendency to project power outward, to see authority as something external. From the earliest monarchs to the gods of ancient civilizations, people have sought meaning and order by placing the divine above and beyond themselves. In doing so, they unknowingly constructed a hierarchy that not only governed their spiritual lives but also dictated their self-worth. If God is up there and we are down here, then surely we must be insignificant, undeserving of the divine spark that animates existence. Such a view breeds dependence. It compels us to seek validation and salvation from an external source rather than from within. If God is out there, then our role is merely to wait for divine intervention, to earn favor through obedience, and to hope for grace that might never come. This passivity alienates us from the active, vibrant connection we share with the universe and keeps us blind to the divinity that resides within us. Moreover, this distance fosters fear. If God is an all-seeing monarch who judges and punishes, then life becomes a test, a constant balancing act to avoid condemnation. This fear stifles growth, exploration, and the deep sense of belonging that comes from understanding our oneness with the divine. We become prisoners of our own misconceptions, building walls between ourselves and the infinite. In truth, this perception is an illusion, a veil over the profound reality that God is not separate from us, but intimately intertwined with our very being. The divine is not confined to some distant realm. It is the essence of everything we see, feel, and experience. It is not an authority over us, but the energy that flows through us, the infinite consciousness expressing itself in countless forms. When we cling to the image of God as a distant ruler, we overlook the extraordinary truth that divinity is woven into the fabric of existence. The galaxies, the mountains, the rivers, and even our thoughts and emotions are all expressions of the same boundless energy. To see God as separate is to deny the unity of creation and to live in a fragmented reality where we are mere observers rather than participants. This separation limits us. It diminishes our potential and reinforces the notion that we are powerless beings at the mercy of an external force. In truth, to recognize God as distant is to misunderstand the essence of the divine, which is not apart from us, but within us, around us, and through us. It is to misinterpret the very nature of existence and our place within it. The perception of God as a distant authority also distorts the relationship we have with ourselves and others. If we believe the divine is far away, we fail to see it reflected in the faces of those around us. We overlook the sacredness in the mundane and dismiss the interconnectedness of all life. This creates division, not just between us and God, but between each other and the world. To see God as distant is to live in exile from the truth of who we are. It is to reject the profound connection that binds all things together and to deny the divine essence that permeates every aspect of existence. Breaking free from this illusion is not just a matter of belief, it is a radical awakening to the infinite potential and unity that lies at the heart of being. Would you like to adjust the tone or delve further into any specific point? The message of Jesus, as recorded in the scriptures, was not merely a religious doctrine, it was a call to awaken to a profound truth about our nature. At its core, his teachings were revolutionary because they sought to dismantle the barriers between humanity and the divine. He spoke of a God that was not distant, unreachable, or confined to a throne in the heavens, but a presence that dwelled within each of us. This idea was radical, not only in his time, but even today, as it challenges deeply rooted structures of authority and belief. When Jesus declared, "I and the Father are one," he did not position himself as an exception to the rule, but as an example. His words were an invitation for all to recognize their unity with the divine. By quoting the scriptures, "Is it not written in your law, ye are gods?" Jesus affirmed that divinity was not an exclusive attribute, but a shared reality. Yet this statement, filled with empowerment and liberation, was deemed blasphemous by those who feared its implications. The religious authorities of his time were deeply invested in maintaining a hierarchy where the divine was inaccessible except through intermediaries. To claim that the divine spark resided in everyone threatened their control, for it suggested that no external authority was necessary to connect with God. Jesus' message was not one of dependence on institutions, but of direct realization, a deeply personal relationship with the sacred. This teaching, however, was subversive. It undermined the societal and religious norms that kept people bound to fear and submission. Jesus' insistence that the kingdom of God is within each of us called for a radical shift in perception. It demanded that individuals look inward for truth rather than outward to religious or political powers. Such a message empowered people to reclaim their spiritual sovereignty, a concept too dangerous for the established order to accept. His revolutionary message extended to how we live and interact with the world. By urging others to love their neighbors as themselves, Jesus revealed that recognizing divinity within oneself must also extend to seeing it in others. This perspective, if embraced fully, dissolves the divisions of class, race, and creed, creating a world grounded in compassion and understanding. It was not just a spiritual awakening he called for, but a profound transformation of society itself. What made his teachings even more profound was their simplicity. He spoke not of complex rituals or lofty philosophies, but of faith, love, and trust. "Do not worry about tomorrow," he said, pointing to the birds and flowers as examples of how life provides when we align ourselves with its rhythm. This was not an abstract ideal, but a practical approach to life, challenging the anxiety and materialism that often dominate human existence. The revolutionary nature of Jesus' message lies in its universality. He did not claim his teachings were meant for a select few, they were for everyone, regardless of background or status. His declaration that greater works could be done by those who followed him shattered the idea of exclusivity. It was a promise that divinity was not a privilege, but an inheritance accessible to all who sought it. Yet, despite its clarity, his message was misunderstood and, over time, deliberately obscured. Religious institutions elevated Jesus to a level of unattainable perfection, making his example seem impossible to follow. By placing him on a pedestal, they distanced his teachings from the everyday lives of people, turning a message of empowerment into one of reverence without action. The tragedy of this distortion is that it robs humanity of the very gift Jesus sought to give, the realization of their divine nature. His teachings were never meant to be an unattainable ideal, but a lived reality, a call to awaken to the infinite potential within. His revolutionary message was not just a challenge to the systems of his time, but a timeless reminder of who we truly are. Over time, the message that Jesus conveyed to humanity has been reshaped, reinterpreted, and in many cases distorted. What began as a liberating call for individuals to realize their unity with the divine has often been transformed into a rigid framework of rules, hierarchies, and dogmas. This distortion, far from being an accidental misstep, reflects the struggle of institutions and authorities to maintain control over the profound truth that Jesus revealed. The original message, which emphasized self-realization and personal connection with the divine, has been obscured by layers of tradition that favor external authority over internal awakening. One of the most significant ways this distortion manifests is through the portrayal of Jesus as a figure so unique and elevated that his life becomes unattainable for ordinary people. The simplicity of his teachings, faith, love, and the recognition of divine unity has been cloaked in theological complexity. By placing Jesus on an unreachable pedestal, his message is no longer about the shared divinity of all, but becomes a tale of exceptionality, one that discourages others from believing they could ever embody the same truth he exemplified. Religious institutions, whether intentionally or not, have often amplified this distortion by creating systems of mediation between humanity and God. These structures claim to hold the key to divine access, creating a dependency on rituals, clergy, and formal doctrine. In doing so, they undermine the central teaching of Jesus that the kingdom of God is within and accessible to all, without need for intermediaries. This shift transforms a message of empowerment into one of submission. Moreover, the revolutionary aspect of Jesus' teachings, the call to see divinity in oneself and others, has been minimized or ignored. This omission is not without consequence. When individuals are discouraged from perceiving their own divine nature, they are also less likely to see it in others. The result is a fragmented society, where division and inequality persist, directly contradicting the transformative love and unity that Jesus emphasized. The distortion of the message also extends to the idea of salvation. Instead of being a journey of personal growth and self-discovery, salvation has often been framed as a transactional process, something to be earned through adherence to rules or bestowed by institutional authority. This interpretation strips away the immediacy and personal responsibility inherent in Jesus' words. Salvation, in its distorted form, becomes a distant hope rather than a present reality that can be lived and experienced. The emphasis on fear and judgment in many interpretations further deepens this distortion. Jesus spoke of love, grace, and forgiveness, yet much of his message has been overshadowed by doctrines that promote guilt and fear of punishment. These interpretations alienate people from the very essence of his teachings, which were meant to inspire trust in the divine and a sense of belonging within the cosmos. Fear, rather than love, becomes the motivator for spiritual practice, leading to a disconnection from the transformative power of his message. Economic and political systems have also played a role in distorting the teachings of Jesus. By aligning with religious institutions, these systems have often promoted interpretations of the gospel that support the status quo rather than challenge it. For example, the directive to be not anxious for the morrow and to trust in divine provision is rarely emphasized, as it undermines the economic structures that thrive on consumerism and fear of scarcity. The subversive nature of Jesus' teachings is conveniently sidelined to maintain societal control. The distortion is not limited to institutional frameworks, it also infiltrates individual interpretations. People often project their own fears, desires, and biases onto the message of Jesus, reshaping it to fit their personal narratives. This human tendency to mold divine truth into a reflection of oneself contributes to the fragmentation and confusion surrounding his teachings. The universality of his message is lost when it is filtered through the narrow lens of personal or cultural bias. Yet the heart of Jesus' message remains intact for those willing to look beyond the distortions. His teachings were not meant to serve as tools for control or division, but as a mirror to show humanity its true nature. The challenge lies in peeling back the layers of interpretation and rediscovering the essence of what he taught. It requires courage to question long-held beliefs and a willingness to embrace the simplicity and universality of his words. The distortion of Jesus' message ultimately speaks to the human tendency to complicate what is simple and to institutionalize what was meant to be personal. His teachings were never about creating barriers or hierarchies, they were about dissolving them. The task for each individual is to move beyond the distortions, to see clearly, and to embody the truth that his life so powerfully demonstrated. The phrase "Son of God," central to the teachings of Jesus, has often been misunderstood and narrowly interpreted. Instead of being seen as an inclusive truth about humanity's shared connection with the divine, it has been restricted to an exclusive label applied solely to Jesus. This interpretation, while venerating Jesus, undermines the transformative power of his message. In truth, the phrase "Son of God" reflects something far deeper, a reminder of the divine essence inherent within every individual, and the unity that connects us all. In the original cultural and linguistic context, "son of" was a phrase that implied being of the same nature as, not merely a biological relationship. When Jesus referred to himself as the Son of God, he wasn't declaring exclusivity, but was instead pointing to a shared divine nature. His teachings and life were demonstrations of what it means to live in full awareness of that truth. He invited others to recognize that same divine spark within themselves, breaking down the illusion of separation between humanity and the divine. The concept of being a son of God speaks to the oneness of existence. Jesus said, "I and the Father are one," not to elevate himself, but to highlight that this unity is accessible to all. His statement wasn't an act of self-aggrandizement, but a call for humanity to awaken to the interconnectedness of life. By recognizing this unity, individuals could transcend the barriers of ego and see themselves as integral parts of the divine whole. When Jesus referenced Scripture, saying, "Is it not written in your law, I have said you are gods?" he emphasized that this idea wasn't new. It had always been present within spiritual traditions, but was often overlooked or misunderstood. He used this reference to remind his listeners that divinity is not something distant or external, but something inherent, waiting to be realized. This reminder challenged the prevailing religious authorities, who sought to maintain a rigid hierarchy that kept divine access out of reach for most. The true meaning of being a son of God also dismantles the concept of a distant, authoritarian deity. Instead of viewing God as a monarch ruling from above, this understanding reveals God as the essence that animates all existence. Jesus embodied this truth, showing that the divine is not something external to be feared, but something internal to be embraced. This realization transforms the relationship between humanity and the divine from one of subservience to one of partnership and unity. However, this inclusive understanding has often been suppressed or distorted. Religious institutions seeking to consolidate power redefined the term to apply solely to Jesus, creating a hierarchy that placed him above humanity rather than alongside it. This shift diverted attention from his radical call for self-realization and placed an unnecessary barrier between people and their own divine potential. The phrase, once meant to inspire empowerment, was reinterpreted to enforce dependence. The implications of this distortion are profound. When individuals are told that only Jesus could embody the divine, they are discouraged from exploring their own spiritual potential. This mindset fosters a sense of inadequacy and alienation, keeping people disconnected from their innate divinity. The message of Jesus, which was meant to liberate, instead becomes a source of limitation. By reclaiming the original meaning of Son of God, humanity can move beyond these constraints and rediscover its true nature. To embrace the true meaning of Son of God is to recognize the divine presence in oneself and others. It is an invitation to see life through a lens of unity rather than division, to act with compassion, and to honor the sacred in every being. This understanding dissolves the barriers between the spiritual and the material, showing that divinity permeates all aspects of life. It calls for a shift in perspective from seeking God outside oneself to realizing that God is within. The true essence of this phrase also encourages personal responsibility. If we are all expressions of the divine, then our actions carry profound significance. Recognizing oneself as a son of God is not a license for arrogance, but a call to live with humility, integrity, and love. It challenges individuals to align their lives with the values that Jesus exemplified: kindness, forgiveness, and an unwavering commitment to truth. Ultimately, the phrase Son of God was never meant to divide humanity into the divine and the ordinary. Instead, it was a proclamation of unity, a reminder that we are all participants in the divine dance of existence. By understanding this, we can move beyond the limitations of dogma and live in the freedom and joy of knowing that we too are part of the divine. Humanity's fear of recognizing divinity within stems from centuries of conditioning that portrays the divine as an external force, distant and separate from human experience. To suggest that divinity resides within each of us challenges deeply ingrained beliefs and destabilizes the power structures that have thrived on these separations. This fear is not just institutional but personal, rooted in the apprehension that acknowledging such power carries immense responsibility. If we are divine, then our choices, thoughts, and actions hold weight far beyond what we are often willing to accept. This fear is perpetuated by the idea that divinity is synonymous with perfection, an unattainable ideal. To see oneself as divine is to confront one's flaws, imperfections, and vulnerabilities, while holding the paradox that these very qualities are integral to the human experience. The divine is not about being flawless, but about embracing and transcending one's humanity. Yet this truth is often overshadowed by fear, as it requires a radical redefinition of what it means to be both human and divine. Religious traditions have historically reinforced this fear by emphasizing the unworthiness of humanity in the presence of a perfect God. Messages of original sin and inherent fallibility create a chasm between individuals and their divine essence. This narrative discourages self-exploration and fosters a reliance on external intermediaries to access the sacred. The result is a disempowered humanity, hesitant to claim its rightful connection to the divine. Recognizing divinity within also confronts the ego, which thrives on separation and individuality. The ego resists the idea of unity as it threatens its carefully constructed identity. To see oneself as part of the divine whole is to let go of the illusions of control and separation that the ego clings to. This process can be unsettling, as it requires surrendering the small self to embrace a larger, interconnected reality. Fear arises from this perceived loss of identity. Additionally, societal norms often discourage such self-recognition. Acknowledging one's divine nature can be seen as arrogance or hubris in a world that values conformity and humility in its most superficial forms. Those who dare to claim their divinity are often ridiculed or ostracized, reinforcing the collective fear of stepping into this truth. The potential backlash from society makes many reluctant to explore or accept the idea of their divine essence. The fear of divinity within also stems from the unknown. What does it mean to live as a divine being? What transformations would it demand in our relationships, values, and choices? These questions are daunting as they challenge the status quo and call for a level of authenticity and courage that can feel overwhelming. The unknown is a space of both potential and risk, and many prefer the comfort of familiar limitations over the freedom of divine realization. There is also an underlying fear of the consequences of claiming divinity. Throughout history, those who have spoken of their divine connection have often faced persecution. Jesus himself was crucified for such claims, and countless others have suffered for expressing similar truths. This historical memory creates a collective apprehension, making individuals wary of the risks associated with recognizing and proclaiming their divine nature. Another dimension of this fear lies in the dismantling of hierarchies. Recognizing divinity within ourselves requires us to see it in others as well. This challenges the power dynamics that rely on the perception of superiority and inferiority. If all are divine, then no one is above or below another, which disrupts systems of control and privilege. This equality is liberating but also deeply unsettling for those who benefit from existing hierarchies. Finally, this fear is rooted in a misunderstanding of the divine itself. The divine is often perceived as a force of judgment, rather than a source of love and unity. To embrace one's divinity is to let go of this fear-based view and adopt a perspective of compassion and interconnectedness. However, this shift requires unlearning years of conditioning and confronting deeply rooted fears about self-worth and the nature of existence. To experience unity with the universe is to dissolve the illusion of separation that has long governed human thought. This unity is not merely a concept, but a profound realization that every being, every atom, and every thought is intricately woven into the fabric of existence. Yet this understanding is elusive for many, as we are conditioned to see ourselves isolated entities defined by the boundaries of our bodies and the confines of our personal lives. The universe, in this sense, appears vast and distant, rather than intimate and immediate. This disconnection creates a sense of alienation. When we view the universe as something out there, we feel like strangers in our own existence, caught between a longing for connection and a fear of insignificance. The stars, the galaxies, and even the Earth itself seem otherworldly, objects of observation rather than participants in a shared essence. This perspective fosters a sense of smallness and isolation, a feeling that we are temporary visitors in a universe indifferent to our existence. However, unity with the universe is an inherent truth, waiting to be rediscovered. The same energy that drives the stars pulses within us. The atoms in our bodies are ancient, forged in the hearts of dying stars billions of years ago. We are not merely in the universe, we are the universe, expressing itself as human for a brief, wondrous moment. This realization dismantles the artificial barriers we create between ourselves and the cosmos. This unity is not a loss of individuality, but a deeper understanding of it. When we see ourselves as part of the whole, our individuality is enriched, not diminished. Just as a wave is both distinct and inseparable from the ocean, so too are we distinct expressions of the universe's boundless creativity. This dual awareness allows us to honor our uniqueness while embracing our connection to everything around us. Experiencing unity with the universe requires a shift in perception. It is not something to be achieved, but something to be recognized. It requires us to let go of the ego's insistence on separateness and surrender to the truth of interconnection. This surrender is not a defeat, but a liberation, freeing us from the confines of self-centeredness and opening us to the vastness of being. In unity, the lines between self and other, between inner and outer, dissolve into a seamless whole. This unity invites a profound sense of belonging. When we realize that we are not separate from the universe, we no longer feel the need to conquer or dominate it. Instead, we see ourselves as stewards and participants in a larger process of creation and evolution. This perspective fosters gratitude and reverence, transforming how we interact with the world and with each other. Unity with the universe also brings a sense of purpose. If we are expressions of the cosmos, then our lives have meaning simply by virtue of being. This meaning is not imposed from outside but arises naturally from within. Each moment becomes an opportunity to align with the flow of the universe, to live authentically, and to contribute to the unfolding of existence in our unique way. This purpose is not a burden but a joy, a reminder of our intrinsic value. In unity we find peace. The struggles and anxieties that arise from a sense of separation dissolve when we realize that we are part of something infinitely larger than ourselves. This peace is not passive but dynamic, a deep trust in the unfolding of life. It allows us to face challenges with resilience and to navigate uncertainties with grace, knowing that we are never truly alone. Finally, unity with the universe is a call to love. When we see ourselves in all things, we cannot help but approach the world with compassion and kindness. This love is not limited to those who are like us, but extends to all beings, to the earth, and to the cosmos itself. It is a love that transcends boundaries, a reflection of the infinite interconnectedness that binds us all. Separation from the universe and from each other has profound consequences on both an individual and collective scale. When we perceive ourselves as disconnected, we create an illusion of otherness, where everything around us becomes something to be conquered or manipulated. This perception leads to a deep sense of alienation, as we begin to see the world as an external entity rather than a reflection of our own being. Instead of experiencing life as an interconnected flow, we feel like isolated islands cut off from the source of all creation. This sense of separation breeds fear. When we see ourselves as separate from others, we begin to fear what is unfamiliar, what is different. This fear manifests as prejudice, distrust, and even violence. We build walls to protect ourselves from the perceived other, forgetting that the other is also a part of the same interconnected web of existence. As we distance ourselves from the world and from one another, the fear of loss and the need for control take root, leading to conflict both internally and externally. On a deeper level, separation results in a crisis of identity. When we fail to recognize our unity with the universe, we lose touch with our true nature. The ego flourishes in this environment, convincing us that we are defined by our possessions, achievements, and external validations. We begin to equate our worth with what we have rather than who we are. This distorted sense of self leads to feelings of emptiness and disillusionment, as we realize that material success and external approval do not fulfill the deeper longing for connection. Separation also manifests in environmental degradation. When we view nature as separate from ourselves, it becomes something to be used and exploited for personal gain. We forget that the earth is not an external resource, but a living, breathing system in which we are intricately involved. This disconnection leads to the destruction of ecosystems, pollution, and unsustainable practices that harm both the planet and ourselves. Our inability to recognize our place within the natural world results in a world that suffers from the consequences of this separation. In relationships, separation leads to misunderstandings and emotional disconnection. We see others as different or competing, rather than as fellow expressions of the same universal energy. This creates conflict as we project our own fears, insecurities, and desires onto others, rather than recognizing that they too are seeking love, understanding, and acceptance. The more we hold on to the illusion of separation, the more we push others away, creating distance rather than fostering connection. Moreover, separation breeds a sense of loneliness. When we feel disconnected from the universe and from each other, we believe we are alone in our struggles. This isolation leads to depression, anxiety, and a deep sense of despair. The human experience, when seen through the lens of separation, becomes a journey of constant searching for meaning, belonging, and purpose. But in this state of loneliness, we overlook the simple truth that we are never truly alone, as we are all part of the same intricate web of life. The consequences of separation are also felt on a societal level. When people feel disconnected from the collective whole, they become more self-centered and driven by personal gain. This fosters inequality as some individuals or groups seek to dominate others for the sake of power, wealth, or status. The sense of unity is lost and societies become divided, with people fighting over resources and control. This division creates systemic problems that perpetuate suffering and injustice, as those in power maintain their position by keeping others in a state of separation. Culturally, separation breeds misunderstanding and conflict. When we see others as different from ourselves, we fail to recognize the shared humanity that connects us all. This leads to the rise of cultural, racial, and religious divisions, where each group sees itself as superior to the others. Rather than celebrating the diversity that enriches the human experience, we view it as a threat to our own identity. This narrow perspective leads to the oppression and marginalization of those who are deemed other, perpetuating cycles of hatred and exclusion. Finally, separation leads to spiritual emptiness. When we disconnect ourselves from the universe and the divine, we lose the sense of purpose and meaning that comes from recognizing our inherent connection to everything. The pursuit of material wealth and external validation can only temporarily fill the void, but it never satisfies the deeper spiritual longing. Without the understanding that we are part of a larger whole, we drift aimlessly, searching for fulfillment in all the wrong places, never realizing that the peace and contentment we seek are already within us, waiting to be rediscovered. Accepting responsibility for our existence is a profound and transformative realization. It is a recognition that we are not mere victims of circumstances, nor are we powerless in the face of life's challenges. Instead, it means understanding that our experiences, our choices, and our responses are fundamentally ours to shape. This responsibility does not imply blame for every hardship or mistake, but rather an acknowledgement that we have the power to influence our lives and the world around us. When we accept responsibility, we step into a place of empowerment, no longer waiting for life to happen to us, but actively engaging with it. This acceptance involves shedding the illusion of helplessness. So many of us live in a state of denial, constantly shifting the blame onto others or external circumstances for our struggles. We blame our families, our environments, our governments, our even fate for the challenges we face. Yet, in doing so, we remain passive participants in our own lives. True empowerment begins when we recognize that, while we cannot control every situation, we always have the ability to control how we respond to what comes our way. Our reactions, attitudes, and choices define our experience of life. One of the key aspects of accepting responsibility is taking ownership of our emotional reactions. Often we allow ourselves to be victims of our emotions, reacting out of anger, fear, or sadness without considering the deeper causes behind these feelings. By accepting responsibility for how we feel, we can begin to unravel the underlying beliefs, fears, and assumptions that shape our emotional responses. This awareness allows us to take conscious control over our emotions, shifting from a reactive stance to a proactive one. Accepting responsibility also involves embracing our role in creating the world around us. We are not isolated beings disconnected from society. Instead, we are active participants in the collective experience of humanity. The choices we make, the actions we take, and the energy we bring to the world ripple outward, influencing others and the environment. Every interaction, no matter how small, contributes to the fabric of society. When we accept this responsibility, we understand that we are not mere bystanders in life, we are co-creators of the reality we experience. In many ways, accepting responsibility requires a shift in perspective, a departure from seeing ourselves as victims of an external world. It is a realization that we are part of the process, not separate from it. Life's events and challenges are not personal attacks, but opportunities for growth. When we accept this, we free ourselves from the burden of resentment and frustration, which often stem from the belief that life is something happening to us, rather than through us. Another aspect of accepting responsibility is recognizing the role of our past choices in shaping our present circumstances. It can be tempting to dwell on past mistakes or missed opportunities, but accepting responsibility means understanding that we are not defined by our past. We cannot change what has happened, but we can choose how to move forward. This power lies in our ability to learn from the past, use it as a stepping stone, and consciously create a different future. The key is in the present moment and the choices we make right now. As we accept responsibility, we also release the need for approval or validation from others. So often we live our lives according to societal expectations, seeking affirmation from those around us. But when we step into the fullness of our own responsibility, we no longer rely on external validation. We trust in our own judgment and values, recognizing that our worth is not determined by others' opinions, but by our own sense of integrity and alignment with our truth. Accepting responsibility is not always easy. It requires us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world. It means acknowledging our flaws, our limitations, and the ways in which we have contributed to our own suffering. However, this confrontation is not a form of self-punishment, but an opportunity for healing. By facing the truth, we can release guilt and shame, recognizing that we are all imperfect beings, learning and growing along the way. This acceptance allows for greater self-compassion and a more authentic connection to others. Ultimately, accepting responsibility for our existence is about claiming our power. It is the realization that we are not powerless or insignificant, but that we have the ability to shape our lives in profound ways. It is an invitation to step fully into our potential, to live with intention and purpose, and to embrace the responsibility that comes with being alive. In doing so, we become active participants in the unfolding of the universe, co-creating a world that reflects our highest ideals. Saying yes to life is a declaration of full acceptance and embrace of the totality of our existence. It is an affirmation that despite the uncertainties and challenges that come our way, we choose to engage with life in its entirety. This isn't about passively accepting whatever comes, but about an active, conscious decision to meet life with openness and curiosity. It means recognizing that every moment, whether good or bad, holds potential for growth and transformation. Saying yes to life is about cultivating a mindset that sees each experience as an opportunity, not a burden. The act of saying yes to life requires us to let go of resistance. Often we spend so much energy fighting against the things we cannot control, whether it's circumstances, relationships, or emotions. Resistance creates a sense of struggle, and we become entrenched in the belief that life is something to be fought against. When we choose to say yes, we stop fighting and start flowing with the rhythm of life. This doesn't mean we surrender to everything passively, but we stop wasting energy on things we cannot change and focus on what we can control: our reactions, our attitude, and our choices. Saying yes is also about living in the present moment. We often dwell in the past or worry about the future, but both are beyond our control. The only thing that is truly ours is the present moment. By saying yes to life, we give ourselves permission to fully inhabit the now. This allows us to experience life more deeply, to feel the richness of the moment, and to let go of unnecessary anxieties. It's in the present that transformation occurs. It is where change and growth happen. To say yes to life is also to embrace our own imperfections. Many of us live with the desire to be perfect or to live up to some ideal, whether it's imposed by society or our own expectations. But life doesn't require perfection, it requires authenticity. Saying yes means accepting ourselves as we are, with all of our flaws, quirks, and imperfections. In this acceptance, we free ourselves from the constant striving for something unattainable and embrace the beauty of being human. Furthermore, saying yes to life means taking responsibility for the direction of our journey. It's easy to fall into the trap of feeling like life happens to us, as though we are passive observers of our own story. But when we say yes to life, we acknowledge that we are active participants in our own unfolding. We may not control everything that happens, but we have the power to choose how we respond to each situation. We take ownership of our actions, our thoughts, and our decisions, recognizing that they shape the path we walk. Saying yes also entails opening ourselves to the unknown. Life is unpredictable, and many of us fear stepping into the unknown, as it brings uncertainty and discomfort. However, by saying yes to life, we allow ourselves to venture into new territory without knowing what the outcome will be. This doesn't mean we throw caution to the wind, but it means embracing the adventure of life and trusting that we can navigate whatever comes our way. The unknown holds the potential for discovery, growth, and unexpected blessings. There's also an element of surrender in saying yes to life. Surrendering does not mean giving up or resigning ourselves to a passive existence. It means releasing the need to control every aspect of our lives. By surrendering, we let go of the anxiety of having everything figured out and allow life to unfold in its natural way. This act of surrender creates space for trust and faith in the process of life, recognizing that there is a greater flow that we can align with rather than constantly fighting against. Saying yes to life is also about cultivating gratitude. Life is filled with both challenges and blessings, and when we choose to say yes, we open ourselves to seeing both sides of the coin. Gratitude allows us to find beauty even in the midst of difficulties, and when we can appreciate life's challenges as opportunities for growth, we elevate our experience. Saying yes fosters an attitude of thankfulness, where we recognize the gift in every moment, every experience, and every lesson that life presents. Lastly, saying yes to life is a call to be fully alive. Too often, we live in a state of half-consciousness, distracted by the noise of daily life and the pressures of survival. Saying yes is a call to wake up to the present moment, to engage deeply with our surroundings, and to savor the experience of being alive. It's about rejecting the temptation to live on autopilot and embracing the fullness of life, with all its joys and sorrows, successes and failures. In saying yes, we commit to living fully, to participating in the unfolding of our own story, and to discovering the richness of existence. Recognizing your divine nature is not about arrogance, it's about awakening. It's about shedding the illusion of separation and embracing the truth that you are not merely in the universe, you are the universe. And in this awareness, we find freedom not to dominate, but to harmonize, to love, and to create. The question is, are you ready to wake up and remember who you truly are?